Hello, welcome to A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. These are the top stories. Israel and Iran attacks continue as leaders warn of further retaliation. G7 leaders gather in Canada to discuss the Israel-Iran conflict. The US Embassy urges American citizens in Iran to depart via the Azerbaijan border. The conflict between Israel and Iran is intensifying, with deadly strikes on both sides stretching into its fourth day. Israel says it's targeting Iran's nuclear program, while Tehran is responding with drones and missiles. More than 200 people have been killed in Iran since Friday, and at least 10 in Israel overnight. With no ceasefire in sight, both leaders are doubling down.
The latest Israeli strikes on Tehran have killed Iran's chief intelligence officer and his deputy in what Israel is calling a continuation of Operation Rising Lion. More than 220 people have been killed in Iran since the start of Israeli strikes on Friday. Iran has hit back with drones and ballistic missiles since then. Several people were injured in the Israeli city of Haifa, and at least 10 people have been killed in strikes overnight. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister says this is about stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions. He says intel shows Iran was on the verge of weaponizing uranium.
We can't have the world's most dangerous regime have the world's most dangerous weapons. We're protecting ourselves, but by doing so, we're protecting many others. The intel we got and we shared with the United States was absolutely clear. Was absolutely clear that they were working in a secret plan to weaponize the uranium. They were marching very quickly. They would achieve a test device and possibly an initial device within months, and certainly less than a year.
Iran says it won't negotiate under fire.
We are by no means seeking to expand the war, but naturally, as our army, our powerful IRGC, and our dear people have shown, appropriate responses have been given so far. The more they try to escalate, naturally, the responses will become tougher and more severe.
Iran's military says the Palestinian-occupied territories are no longer safe for Israelis and urged residents of Israel to leave the vicinity of vital areas for their safety.
We currently possess a complete database of all your sensitive and critical locations and vital points. Know that staying in underground shelters will not provide you with security.
Meanwhile, leaders of the G7 are meeting in Canada from Monday, with the escalating Israel-Iran conflict expected to top the agenda. With no ceasefire in sight and both countries vowing to press on, the region remains on edge.
Thousands of tourists have been left stranded in Israel after an Israeli strike on Iran on Friday, leading to an escalation of missile fire from both sides over the weekend. Flights have been cancelled and cities are under lockdown, with many visitors stuck in hotels, sheltering from sirens and blasts, unsure when they'll be able to leave.
Tourists in Jerusalem have been caught off guard by Israel's attack on Iranian nuclear facilities since Friday. The escalation has brought life in both Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to a complete standstill. What began as brief holidays has turned into indefinite stays for thousands of foreign visitors. With Israel's airspace closed and flights cancelled until further notice, an estimated 40,000 tourists are now stranded in the country.
Very new experience for me personally, being in America. And it is scary to hear, missiles being intercepted, to feel the concussive blast, even though it's up in the sky, and to have to take your son and your father and go down to a bomb shelter, which is just something you don't even have to consider in America, at least not since the 60s. So it makes me feel uneasy. I'm very anxious to get back home.
Some are now looking to neighbouring countries as alternative exit routes.
We're looking for alternative places to stay because it may be a lengthy one. And so looking for like kitchenettes, some place to kind of reduce some of our expenses. and also checking on, of course, flight schedules, perhaps out of Jordan, if possible, and because it may be a while before Israeli airports open up.
The streets of Jerusalem have been deserted. The old city is under tight restrictions, with limited access to residents and sites such as the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Western Wall largely emptied. Locals describe the city's conditions in a total deterioration ever since the Gaza conflict. But now, with Iran firing missiles into Jerusalem and directly targeting Tel Aviv, growing concerns the conflict is far from over.
I was supposed to fly back tomorrow, but now I don't know when the airport going to be reopen even. And also I want to stay until I see it's more safe, it's calm, because my kid's here. So I want to see everything is good, then I go back. Maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know.
Israel's tourism ministry has launched a round-the-clock virtual help desk to support foreign nationals. Until then, travellers remain in limbo, far from home and unsure of what comes next.
Fuel shortages, fear and frustration, that's the reality for many in Tehran, as residents queue for hours at petrol stations amid continued Israeli airstrikes and fears of further escalation.
In the Iranian capital, scenes of urgency and uncertainty. Cars and motorcycles stretch around the block as residents scramble to fill up before the next Israeli strike.
People are worried, and most of the petrol stations are crowded because people are planning to get out of the city.
Some are trying to stay calm, even if they are unsure of what lies ahead.
I don't believe residential areas were hit. I'm generally relaxed. I'm not sure what's exactly happening.
But the growing queues and fuel rations are making it harder for many to move.
People are certainly worried. It's not a good situation. Petrol stations are not providing the amount we need. A car needs 40 to 50 litres of fuel, but they're only selling 20 litres, and then you have to queue up again. And most people are planning to leave the city, or they have other engagements to attend. But everyone is stuck here, as you can see.
And for those thinking of sheltering in place, options are limited.
We don't have access to a shelter. There are no shelters in the whole city. I don't think there are any places people can go to in an emergency.
As missiles continue to fly over the weekend, Tehran is bracing for what may come next, with no clear end in sight.
The Israel-Iran conflict continues with heavy strikes, and today we're joined live from Lisbon, Portugal by political analyst Anna Evans to unpack the latest events there. Anna, welcome to the program.
Hello, Dilek. Good to see you.
Thank you. Now, is this Israeli objective limited to demolishing Iran's nuclear program, as they've said, or is this also an operation aimed at leading to the downfall of the Islamic Republic?
Well, the immediate objective for Israel is without doubt hindering the advances in the Iranian nuclear program. Because according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, there has been a fast acceleration of Iran's nuclear capacity, and we know that nuclear capacity is a dual capacity, meaning it is currently being used for energetic purposes, but it can be easily switched to military purposes. And according to the Israeli government, the capacity that Iran has so far amassed with its uranium enrichment program means that Iran could very quickly be able to deploy several nuclear weapons. Israel, from a national security standpoint, cannot engage with the possibility that it is hit by a nuclear weapon, because it is such a little country that one nuclear weapon would basically wipe out Israel off the map. And so in national security terms, it is, a very urgent, immediate objective to prevent the program from expanding. And the fall in the Syrian regime, so the fall from Assad, means that Israel now has the perfect conditions to deploy an attack, because it will not be possible for Iran to send resources to Hezbollah and indirectly to Hamas via the Syrian corridor. So this is the perfect timing. Of course, if the theocratic regime in Iran, Khamenei as the great leader, Islamic leader, if this regime fell, that would be of course ideal. If, of course, a democracy would be installed, because just the fall of a theocratic regime does not ensure anyone that there will be a democracy afterwards. And so, of course, if there was democracy in Iran, everybody would be happy. This would be the happiest outcome. But we do not know what would follow. And again, it's not just Israel that is concerned with nuclear power. The Arab states are also concerned with the possibility that Iran will eventually be a nuclear military power, because that would force the Arab states as well to race very quickly to the nuclear weapon. They would not want to be non-nuclear regional powers in the face of another nuclear power, and considering the cleavage between the Shiite and the Sunni in the Islamic world. Therefore, this is an Israeli initiative that, if it dismantles the nuclear capacity, will be welcomed regionally, although of course in public nobody will say that, because it is not according to international law to do this kind of preemptive strike.
That's correct, and Iran has been very quick to retaliate, understandably on some level. What will Iran's endgame be here?
Well, Iran needs to show, first and foremost, to its domestic population that it is not at the mercy of Israel's strikes. It is really dangerous for the regime, for the current regime, if the current regime does not show very quickly that it has leverage as well, that it is not at the mercy of Israel. That's I would say, the most immediate game for Iran. But of course, ideally, Iran would want to dismantle Israel's air capacity, but this does not seem possible for Iran. And the reason being that Israel is endowed with a very large arsenal of highly sophisticated air weapons, and Israel has also shown great intelligentsia capacity, because Israel has picked up very concrete targets, for example, with the heads of the nuclear program and of the military forces. These sophisticated, very targeted attacks at the heart of Iran show a very, very high level of intelligentsia. And, although Israel is a really very, very tiny country, so is the Iran's air arsenal. It's rather limited in terms of the missiles that have the capacity to penetrate Israel's Golden Dome. And so Iran knows that if it keeps using its most advanced missiles, it will soon run out of the capacity to penetrate the Golden Dome. And so it is a fine line here with regard to what Iran can do at this stage. And of course, there is still the possibility that Iran could attack Western interests US, French or British interests in their bases in Arab countries and using Iraq, which is its remaining bastion, to do so. But that's again a very risky game because Iran is already stretched in terms of its military capacities. And so Iran also has the energetic weapon option. And so we know that energy markets are already in turbulence because of the war. And we know that Iran has a lot of leverage around the Persian Gulf and in the Hormuz Strait. But it is a very, very fine line again. You know, using this weapon can also mean that Iran will lose its financing revenues that are mostly from the sales of energy.
Okay, Anna, thank you so much for joining the program today. We appreciate your contribution.
Thank you, Dilek.
Now, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Israel has a right to defend itself against Iran, but stressed that a diplomatic solution was the best option in the long term to address Iran's nuclear program. Speaking to reporters ahead of the G7 summit in Canada, von der Leyen said she had spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a phone call to discuss the situation.
I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. I reiterated Europe's commitment to peace and stability in the Middle East. In this context, Israel has the right to defend itself. Iran is the principal source of regional instability, and we've always been very clear. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. We have voiced our strong concerns over Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. A diplomatic solution remains the best way in the long run to address concerns about Iran's nuclear program. And Europe remains committed to finding a lasting solution through a negotiated deal.
G7 leaders meet in Canada amid rising global tensions and economic challenges, with recent attacks by Ukraine and Israel likely to shape the agenda.
Leaders of the G7 nations are gathering in Kananaskis, Alberta on Sunday and Monday, with security concerns and economic tensions expected to top the agenda. The ongoing war in Ukraine and rising hostilities between Israel and Iran are likely to drive discussions, as both conflicts escalated in the lead-up to the summit. Israeli president has called on the group to push for the removal of nuclear weapons from Iran, speaking amid scenes of destruction at a recent missile strike site. Canadian analysts suggest that the timing of the Ukrainian and Israeli operations were likely strategic, aimed at influencing the summit's focus.
Well, one can't help but think, given the extensive planning that went into both the Ukrainian attack and the Israeli attack. I mean, these attacks take a long time to get your people into place. And so the calculation that both the Ukrainians and the Israelis would have had to have made is, what is the impact if we do this before, after, or during the G7? And so obviously they're making some form of calculation, and the calculation is either they're thinking this gets them on the agenda and they want to be discussed amongst the G7 nations, or they don't care. Time to get your
economic concerns, particularly US tariff policies, are also expected to surface.
I think that it'll be sort of like, okay, you know, how do we deal with the economic challenges without necessarily saying that the whole problem is the American tariffs? I mean, that is going to be the elephant in the room as we move forward.
Organisers are expected to skip the traditional joint communiqué to avoid a repeat of the 2018 summit, when Trump retracted his support after leaving.
Mitch McCann reports from Canada's Kananaskis region with the latest on the G7 summit.
World leaders are arriving here in Kananaskis, Canada, at a time of great volatility in many parts of the world. In the coming days, at the top of the agenda now for discussions is likely to be the ongoing escalation and violence between Iran and Israel that we've seen in recent days. Now, most G7 countries have already put out statements calling for the violence to be de-escalated. However, we understand now, according to reports, that all G7 countries are likely to come out together and put out a joint communique or a statement about this, calling for a de-escalation intention. So expect that to be at the top of the list of discussions. Also, there are a number of other items on the schedule for the coming days that have been set by the leader of the host country, Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. Among them, a coordinated response to wildfires. That's a very important issue to Canada and, of course, the United States. Canada currently dealing with wildfires in the Saskatchewan province, but also the United States has been dealing with serious fires in recent months and years. Of course, we don't have to look far back to remember the devastating fires in Los Angeles, but also in Hawaii before that. So that'll be one point on the agenda. Another is energy security and also discussions on the advancements of artificial intelligence. But it's fair to say that conflicts around the world are probably going to dominate discussions here in the Kananaskis region of Canada. There's obviously the ongoing war in Gaza that will be talked about among the leaders, but also the war in Ukraine. Now, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, has personally invited President Volodymyr Zelensky here, and he'll be here in the coming days to talk about strategies and ending that war. Now, that is an interesting discussion involving the United States, because in recent weeks it has seemed as if, based on Donald Trump's comments, that he is growing tired of this process taking too long, a slow process to end that war. He's also expressed frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin, suggesting he might not be wanting to find peace in the end. So those are issues that will be talked about, but obviously trade and the economy will be another one. It will be potentially awkward for Donald Trump to sit around the table with other world leaders he's put large tariffs on in recent months. It will be interesting having Donald Trump here. Many leaders will be working out and strategizing how to interact with the US president, not wanting to antagonize him. We don't have to look too far back in 2018 when Donald Trump left here early and then criticized the then Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. So world leaders will be approaching Donald Trump with caution, but it's very likely that many will want to meet him and have bilateral discussions as they try and reduce their own trade burdens as those negotiations continue. So plenty of topics for discussion here in the Kananaskis region, but of course conflicts around the world are likely to take precedent. Mitch McCann, 4A News, in the Kananaskis region of Canada.
The manhunt for a gunman who killed a prominent Minnesota lawmaker and her husband and wounded another 2 people has come to an end. The suspect, Vance Bolter, was taken into custody on Sunday evening after a 2-day statewide search.
After a 2-day manhunt across Minnesota, police arrested Vance Bolter, a 57-year-old man accused of posing as a police officer before carrying out 2 politically targeted shootings. Former Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were killed in their Brooklyn Park home early Saturday morning. Hours earlier, Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were attacked at their home in Champlin, 9 miles away. The Hoffmans survived. In a message shared by Senator Amy Klobuchar, Yvette Hoffman wrote that her husband took 9 bullets and she took 8. Authorities say Bolter altered a vehicle to resemble a police cruiser. Inside, a manifesto, a target list, and a tan cowboy hat believed to be his. A reward of $50,000 had been offered for his capture. Local authorities praised the efforts of its officers, stating that there were more than 100 policemen involved in the search and they received more than 400 public tip-offs.
Tensions flared in downtown Los Angeles at the weekend as police used tear gas and mounted units to disperse crowds during the second week of protests. Protests intensified following a military parade on Sunday, marking 250 years of the US Armed Forces, coinciding with President Donald Trump's birthday. The protests followed a week of tension in the city, where demonstrations over federal immigration raids resulted in Trump calling in National Guard troops and US Marines to help keep the peace. China's economy showed strain last month in May as factory output slowed to a 6-month low and property investment fell sharply, according to a new report. While retail sales improved, the country continues to face challenges with the US-China trade war and weaknesses from the housing market.
China's economy is showing signs of strain, with official data revealing a slowdown in industrial output and deeper troubles in the property sector. That's according to the latest report from China's National Bureau of Statistics on Monday, which shows mixed economic data. The country's factory output growth hit a 6th-month low in May, while retail sales picked up steam, offering temporary relief for the world's second-largest economy.
In May, the value-added industrial output of large-scale enterprises nationwide increased by 5.8% year-on-year and 0.61% month-on-month.
However, it was the slowest growth since November last year. Within the property sector, investments plunged more than 10% and home sales shrank.
Real estate development investment declined by 10.7%. The total floor area of newly built commercial housing sold nationwide was 353.15 million square metres, a year-on-year decrease of 2.9%.
There's also growing pressure from abroad. US President Donald Trump said last week that a trade deal that restored a fragile truce in the US-China trade war was done, with Trump confirming a steep 55% tariff on Chinese exports.
In the next stage, there are still many external instabilities and uncertainties, which will place some pressure on China's foreign trade growth. However, China still has clear comprehensive advantages in foreign trade development, and the continued expansion of high-level opening up will support the steady development of foreign trade.
Beijing last month rolled out a package of stimulus measures, including interest rate cuts and a major liquidity injection, aimed at shielding the economy from the hit from US tax hikes. However, analysts continue to flag challenges for China in hitting its growth target of roughly 5% this year, and warns an imminent stimulus was unlikely.
Several foreign countries have appealed to the government of Azerbaijan for assistance in evacuating their citizens from Iran, requesting permission for transit through Azerbaijani territory en route to their home countries. The evacuation process remains ongoing. Members of Russia's Grand Symphony Orchestra express heartfelt gratitude after arriving safely in Azerbaijan from Iran. They thank both Azerbaijani and Russian authorities for the coordinated effort and announced a special concert at the Baku Philharmonic dedicated to the experience they've just lived through.
Yes, my name is Pyotr Surekin. I'm a cellist in the Grand Symphony Orchestra, and I'm truly touched by the attention shown to an ordinary musician. On behalf of the orchestra, I want to thank everyone, especially the Azerbaijani side, for the great honour and support they gave us by welcoming our orchestra in this difficult situation. We are frequent guests in Baku, and I hope we'll be visiting even more often.
Добрый вечер, меня зовут Денис Калинский, я играю на виолончели в большом...
Good evening, my name is Denny Kalinsky. I play the cello in the Grand Symphony Orchestra of the BSOVR. The evacuation went, if I can put it this way, according to plan. We didn't face any major difficulties. Everything was very well organised. The team worked in a coordinated way, everyone maintained a mobilised attitude, you could say. Overall, everything went smoothly. All the services operated efficiently, everything was great. We'd like to express our gratitude to everyone, in particular to the Azerbaijani side for receiving us, as well as the Russian services, the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Everyone did their part and helped us. A sincere thank you to all of them.
Российские, Министерство культуры и МИД России, в общем, все сработало, все помогли, и большое им спасибо человеческое.
Подготовился к интервью, я просто я просто...
I want to thank the Republic of Azerbaijan for giving us the opportunity to evacuate so quickly and smoothly. What's more, we've made the decision to perform a concert tomorrow at the Baku Philharmonic with the group that stayed behind and didn't fly out. It may be an unusual concert, but I believe it will be genuine and heartfelt, because these are the people who experienced those 3 intense days. And yet, we've made it to Azerbaijan.
Amid rising tensions in the region, the United States has issued a stark warning to its citizens in Iran: leave immediately, and urges Americans to exit the country, recommending Azerbaijan's border as the safest route out. The advisory follows recent evacuations coordinated with Azerbaijani authorities, who've already helped facilitate the safe passage of foreign nationals.
In a new advisory, the United States Virtual Embassy in Iran has issued a pressing call for American citizens currently in Iran to depart the country immediately, and where possible, to do so through neighboring Azerbaijan. The advisory issued over the weekend comes amid escalating regional tensions. With limited diplomatic presence inside Iran, the US is relying on its virtual platform to communicate urgent travel guidance. The message specifically recommends the use of Azerbaijan's land border crossings, notably the Astara checkpoint, citing it as one of the safest and most cooperative routes for departure.
Appreciate you doing this for us. As I said, the border is not usually open, so you've been an exception, and we very much appreciate it. There is very few options at this point, so yeah, it's a tough situation over there. Yeah.
The Azerbaijani government has already facilitated safe passage for several foreign nationals, including Russian citizens and diplomatic staff from the Kyrgyz Republic.
At least 40 Azerbaijani citizens have so far been evacuated from Iran amid growing concerns of tensions between Tehran and Tel Aviv. That's according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which says the Azerbaijani embassy in Iran and the chief consulate in Tabriz are reviewing applications from citizens and taking necessary measures. The number of people include family members at the embassy who have been granted access to the Iran-Azerbaijan border. Aykan Hajizadeh said that Azerbaijan's diplomatic missions in Iran will continue. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has warned that tensions sparked by Israel's recent attack on Iran pose a serious threat to regional security. In a phone call with Oman's Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, Erdogan stressed the importance of resolving the crisis through dialogue, especially with nuclear talks set to resume. He also said that the developments must not shift focus away from the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Azerbaijan says it won't allow its territory to be used in any attack against a third country, including Iran. The statement comes amid rising tensions in the region as Baku urges diplomacy and dialogue. Now, joining me to discuss further is Murat Muradov. He's the Deputy Director of Topçu Bashov Center. Welcome to the program, Murat.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Now, how significant is Azerbaijan's statement in the context of regional security, and what message is Baku trying to send to both Iran and the international community here?
I think this message is of utmost importance. But first of all, we know that the allegations about Azerbaijan's participation in certain anti-Iranian activities, including intelligence, including deploying of weapons and even military bases, has been made for years without any grounds. And it's been exploited by some circles in Iran, but not only in Iran, in Armenia. We see like many Armenian media or some Western media joining this allegations in order to put Azerbaijan in a negative light and to destabilize the situation in Azerbaijan. And so in this regard, I think, given how tense the situation is, the high risks of the conflict spillover in different countries, the fragile balance in the Greater Middle East. I think it's important that Azerbaijan has been consistently neutral, not taking sides in the conflict, and made the principle of bilateralism the key one in its international strategy. And we've been always emphasizing that, like, our friendship with Israel, with any other country actually, is not directed against third parties. So, and I think during the latest visit of President Pezeshkian to Baku, it's been emphasized once more that we're firmly committed to have friendly and reliable relations with Iran.
Okay. Now, with Iran's airspace closed and diplomatic transit now rerouted through Azerbaijan, what kind of pressure or challenges might this bring for Baku domestically and diplomatically?
First of all, now if you look at the map, you can see that now a very narrow corridor between China, Central Asia on one hand, and Turkey and Europe on another has been shaped, basically, which runs through South Caucasus, while for both like most of Russia, and now there's a great chunk of the Middle East from Iran to through Iraq and Jordan to Israel have become effectively non-flying zones. So of course there will be much more pressure on Azerbaijani airspace in terms of handling the increasing traffic. For example, another challenge will be the considerable lengthening of the flight time between Baku and Gulf countries like Emirates, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, which now will take a couple of hours more than before. And given the intense character of our economic relations, people-to-people relations, it can create certain economic challenges. And I hope that we'll not see a major exodus of people from Iran, like a flow of refugees, which of course will be hard to handle. Hopefully, we will be able to manage the situation as it is now. So I think Azerbaijan has shown in the last few days that it's ready to accept hundreds of citizens, both Azerbaijani and third country citizens, trying to go back from Iran.
Okay. Murad, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
The Parliament of Georgia has approved amendments to the law on the status of foreigners and stateless persons, introducing a new residence permit specifically for IT specialists. The law will take effect starting on the 1st of September, with the final list of required documents to be announced before then. The permit will be valid for 3 years, but will be revoked if the holder spends less than 183 days in Georgia within any 12-month period. Eligible applicants include foreign IT professionals registered as labour migrants, small business owners, or representatives and managers of international IT companies. This permit allows holders to legally reside in Georgia and access various state programs. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Kazakhstan for a 3-day state visit to attend the second China Central Asia Summit, held in the capital Astana from Monday to Wednesday. The visit comes at the invitation of Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. National flags of China and Kazakhstan lined the streets of Astana on Sunday, reflecting the warm welcome for the Chinese leader. Leaders from Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan are also expected to attend the summit, aimed at deepening regional cooperation. We brought you the latest updates from Baku. Thanks for watching, and join us again on A News for more updates.